How far would you go to help someone? How far would you be willing to go to help someone that you don't even know? Would you risk your life to help someone else? Would you risk your life for a stranger? More specifically, would you risk your life for someone else's freedom, for someone else's rights? Does freedom mean anything to you? Does it matter to you? Well, for this woman, freedom meant everything to her. In 1820, Harriet Tubman was born into slavery in Dorchester County, Maryland. She was originally named Araminta Ross, that she later changed to Harriet to honor her mother. And even in her early years, her fight for justice was already apparent. At age 12, she stepped in between an argument with another slave and another owner, and because of that, she was nearly killed. A 2-pound weight was aimed towards her skull and caused multiple fractures, causing lifelong headaches and seizures, and even narcoleptic seizures. But it was these same symptoms that gave her powerful visions that she ascribed to God, and that helped her guide her on her path to saving many others to freedom later on. Physical violence was a daily part of her life, not only for her, but for her family. And the violence that she suffered early in her life caused permanent physical injuries. Tubman even remembered and mentioned that some of these violences was her being lashed and whipped 5 times before breakfast. But nothing compared to the emotional trauma that she faced, seeing her other siblings being sold and ripped away from her. Later on, as she grew as an adult, in 1844, she married John Tubman. And it was then that she realized that she'd had enough of this slavery and wanted to be free. She tried every means possible for freedom, from talking to her slave owner, from negotiating to her slave owner to be free, to even hiring a lawyer to fight for her freedom. But nothing was working, and it only made things worse and only made her beatings worse. 5 years later, she heard rumors about being sold, and she decided to take matters into her own hands, and she decided to fight for her freedom. She eventually ran away from her plantation and went on a road to her own personal freedom. Harriet Tubman was illiterate and had little knowledge. She couldn't even read a map, and she only had her faith and the North Star to follow. She traveled by foot 100 miles north, eventually reaching freedom in Philadelphia. Harriet Tubman eventually gained her freedom, but she wasn't content or satisfied. She didn't feel free unless everyone else was free also. She vowed to her plantation, she vowed to her fellow workers and her family that she would return and bring her friends and family to freedom. And she did just that. And for the next 10 years, she made more than a dozen trips to Maryland to free slaves, in a path that we all know as the Underground Railroad. Harriet was amongst many slave owners in Maryland, and she was wanted amongst all of those slave owners for taking their slaves, some even offering a monetary reward for finding her. But that didn't stop her or scare her away, and not once did she get caught. She eventually gained the nickname Moses, because like Moses, she was responsible of bringing people to freedom. So then later on, Tubman used her skills that she learned while observing the stars and working in the fields and the woods to guide people to freedom. And she also gave people instructions, fellow slaves instructions, who eventually found their way to freedom as well. She later took her last trip to Maryland in 1960, rescuing a whopping 300 slaves. But she wasn't finished. The Civil War happened, and during the Civil War, she took on many tasks and roles. She served as a spy, a scout, a nurse, and even a cook in the U.S. Army. She even helped the Army rescue more than 700 enslaved people during the raid in South Carolina. She lived a brave and accomplished life, putting the lives of others before her own, resulting to the freedom of nearly 1,000 slaves. But she said and she believed she could have saved many more if only they knew they were slaves. So wherever we are, whoever we are, whatever color of our skin, let us never take our freedom for granted. And just like Harriet, let us continue to fight for the rights of one another. And let us continue to remember those who fought for our rights. Thank you.